Good afternoon and welcome to IPDay's Webinar Wednesday. Our topic today is shared skills and stronger scores. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you have any questions, please be sure to drop them in the Q&A option within the platform. That's where we're going to go to look for questions and provide answers intermittently throughout today's webinar. Please remember also that you will be muted and you are in listen-only mode. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be archived and available on the IPDay website within the next 48 hours. My name is Megan Duke. I am an IPDay trainer instructor and also the instructional coordinator at Indian River State College. Here is my contact information. So just a welcome and an overview. The webinar today is about shared skills and stronger scores. I'm going to go over the GED performance level descriptors, what that is and where to locate it. Mean, median, mode, and range across the different subject areas, and where to locate some resources and some practice questions on that. Charts, graphs, and tables across different subject areas. And then at the end, please just kind of think about, as we're rolling through our webinar today, I believe in a community of resources and collaboration among peers. So we're going to be sharing some resources as it pertains to GED instruction. So high impact concepts. So I'm going to be sharing my different screen here. This is a resource that I really enjoy called Mentimeter. This is a great way to not only collaborate with our colleagues, but also our students. So I wanted to try it out with you today. What concepts cross multiple different subject areas on the GED final exams? You can participate by scanning the QR code in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And you can also participate by going to menti.com and putting in this code. But the question is, what concepts cross multiple subject areas on the GED final exams? You see answers like averages, of course, the reading, science, math, and social studies. And I know averages we see on a couple of those. What other critical thinking, test taking skills, percents, graphing, problem solving? So again, these are, as I was saying, these are different topics that students are going to see on more than just one of the subject area exams on the GED practice and final exams. So one of the things that I really wanted to focus on, one of the things I wanted to show to you today was the performance level descriptors. Because if you go to the GED.com website, this is a document that you can find there. Like I said, the website, this PowerPoint will be posted later on the IPDay website, so you'll be able to find it. But this is on the GED.com website, and it is a chart that gives you all of the different topics that are tested in each subject area, and you're going to see trends that cross over multiple different subject areas. So let me show you that document. So again, like I said, you can find it on the GED.com website right here. And again, the link will be shared with you later. But this is the document. When you select a performance level descriptors chart, it's that first bullet here. here is what you are going to see. It's going to give you the performance level descriptors by level. So below passing, the 100 to 144. But as you can see, I know, and it's difficult to see here, so this will be provided for you in a handout as well. You see reasoning through language arts, mathematical reasoning, science and social studies, and then by passing level. So below passing, scroll on down, pass high school equivalency, and then maybe some of those other higher level topics and concepts as well. But what I did was, is as I was kind of working in my own classrooms, I was noticing that I was seeing a lot of different topics that were crossing multiple subject areas, like I said, and one of them was range, median, and mode. So that's one thing that I want to practice on today. But again, a quick way, that's one of the one things I love about Adobe is that I was able to search for that, right? I was able to find, and this says, so calculate, this is in social studies on the first page, C1 has mean. Type in mode, it's going to do the same thing, but now I'm seeing that it's also in science on page C2. It's also in mathematical reasoning on page C3. You saw in science and social studies that was in the below passing range, but it's going to be one of those foundational skills that they need to work up to in order to get that passing score. But in math, it's within the passing range here. So this is just one example that I wanted to cover today and kind of give you some resources on that. So based on the performance level descriptors, mean, median, mode, and range are concepts on 3 of the 4 GED subject area exams: math, science, and social studies. So here on this screen, you can see that this is mean, median, mode, and range, but in the context of just math. Okay, so as we're kind of looking at this, is this question, is there anything that stands out to you? And you can answer this question in the chat, because I want to be able to look at the question and kind of look and let you see what other participants of the webinar are thinking as we go on the same screen. So is there anything that stands out to you? What are some things that need to be taught to students, shown to students outside, inside of just being able to calculate mean and mode, but also other math test taking tips and strategies? So again, you can put that information in the chat. This data set has mode. Median needs to be ordered before it can be determined. Very good. Any other things that you can think of when you look at this question? The difference between mean and median. Oftentimes mean and median, this word's kind of, they both start with ME. The students get confused on which one is which. Adding and dividing for mean, so they need to have those basic skills. They need to know which numbers to add and what to divide by. Very good. Another thing I'm thinking of too is that these aren't just this is a data set of money. So we're introducing decimals. And oftentimes when we see decimals and fractions, regardless of what the question is asking, students kind of get that little bit of panic or anxiety because they're like, oh, decimals, fractions are more difficult. Also in the question, you can see down at the bottom that it's asking them to round to the nearest tenth. So again, even though the question is focusing on mean and median, we need to kind of, as we're preparing our students for final exams, need to be thinking about these other aspects. I love this in the chat. Thank you, Karen. In this example, if there are 7 items, once in an order, the fourth one is the middle. Very good. So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers in my data set. So when I'm finding the median, the middle number, it's very easy to find because I have an even number of numbers in my data set. But when I have an odd number, it's going to change up how I solve this problem. So thank you, Karen, for that, for sure. So also I wanted to mention that the students, of course, have access to, and we need to show them how to use the reference sheet and how to locate it when they're taking these final exams. So I put the link down here. And again, you should receive that in the slides for this presentation. But I want you to notice how on the reference sheet, it only tells students what mean and median are. It does not tell the students what mode and range are. So they'll be able to use the reference sheet to jog their memory, so to speak, for mean and median, but they need to be able to understand what mode and range are. And they also need to understand that average, because sometimes mean, they'll use the word average instead of mean. So these are just some things that I've come across with my students. Students have asked and I have noticed. So I wanted to share them in today's webinar. Okay. So also in the context of math, whether it's mean, median, mode, or range, or it could be any math concept, there are different question types that students are going to come across. How are they going to be asked to respond to a certain question? So in Mentimeter again, we're going to use that same QR code and that same 8-digit code if needed. What are the 4 math question types that students will see on the GED? Meaning multiple choice, short answer. What are the 4 different question types? And I really like Mentimeter because in this setting, I'm doing a lot of open-ended questions, but you can also do polls. You can also do multiple choice. This is a really fun way for students to interact in your classroom to kind of get them engaged where they feel less threatened because they don't know who's answering what. So maybe they got the incorrect answer. And so it kind of causes them to not want to, for fear of incorrect answers, not want to participate. But in this case, they can participate and nobody knows who said what, but it's still, they feel engaged and empowered to be able to get their voice out there. Fill in the blank, gridded multiple choice, hot spots, drop down, drag and drop, absolutely. So in saying that, only multiple choice and fill in the blank are relevant to range, median, and mode, but we're going to talk about some other topics where they're going to have to use drag and drop and hotspots as well. So thank you for doing that with me. Okay, so as we just said, multiple choice, drag and drop or drop down, fill in the blank, and hotspots. So here's another question. We're going to kind of shift. We're staying on mean, median, and mode and range, but now we're switching over to science. Okay, so students are still, again, asked to find these, calculate these same data points, but they have to be able to do it in the context of science as well. So you can see here's a practice question. A commercial aircraft must reach speeds of approximately 140 to 180 miles per hour at takeoff, depending on the size of the aircraft. The table below shows a commercial aircraft speed in 15-second intervals as it takes off the runway. So again, they're collecting information from, now it's just not a set of numbers across the screen, it's in a table setting. And of course, here it's multiple choice and it's asking for median. We could have this same question and it could ask for mean. It could ask for the range. So we need to have students prepared to do all of those across all 3 subject areas. Okay. Also, again, too, we're constantly referring them back to the reference sheet for mean and median, but instilling in them, helping them memorize what mode and range is. Okay, here is another question for mean, median, mode, and range, but in the content of social studies. And I won't read this because it's a course of a lot longer, but especially in science and social studies, students might be required to read several sentences or paragraphs, look at a graph or table representation of data, and then use one or both in order to answer a question. Okay, so one of the things I was talking with my students about, and I think it's relevant for any science or social studies question, is here we want to go to, I always tell my students, what is the meat of the question? What is the meat of the question? Meaning, what is this question really asking me? And it says, based on the table, which statement is true, and I'm doing mean and range. Okay. So in this case, reading this paragraph is not really relevant to the student in order to complete this question. And I love to show my students that, because sometimes for them, it's like they need to understand. We know that having a time limit on the test stresses a lot of people, rightfully so. So what can we show them? What tricks and tips can we show them in order to save time? Okay, so again, it wasn't helpful to them to read this whole paragraph. They only needed to look at the data on the table and then answer the question. And again, you can answer this in the chat because I want you to be able to look at the question and look at what other people are suggesting. What other test taking tips might be helpful for students in solving a question like this? I talked about too, and sometimes there might be a graphic, a map, a table, a graph, and that's not relevant so much to the question as the text that goes with it. Another thing that I thought of that was really relevant, especially in this case, is teaching the students how to use the graphing calculator that is available to them. So a lot of times it's super easy for students to grab out their phones during class and use that to solve their math problems. But being able to use the graphing calculator is going to be beneficial to them when they start to get to those higher order questions, where they're going to be asked to be doing things with exponents and square roots and things like this. Of course, with these type of questions, it's going to be simple addition, ordering, dividing, but again, giving them all of those resources. So I know there are a lot of resources out there, and I know there's some on GED.com that teach the student how to use the graphing calculator. Christopher says use deductive reasoning to disqualify 2 answers directly. I love that. I always tell my students there's at least 1, sometimes 2 answer choices that make no sense. So when you're stuck with deductive reasoning, what answer choice can you get rid of? Karen says get 28 minus 6 equals 22 from range. Okay. So none are true. Okay, so I need to kind of go back and look at my math here. Thank you, Karen, for letting me know, and I'll fix that before we send it out to you. But yet deductive reasoning is a surefire way to help them in figuring out, like you said, A and C are automatically wrong. Okay, so getting rid of ones you know are wrong and helping them narrow it down. And then if they unfortunately do have to make a guess, at least it's down to a 50-50 guess instead of 25% if you guess A, B, C, or D. Very good. Okay. All right. So as we were going through range, median, mode, and range, um, across the different subject areas. Was there any other resources, any other suggestions, things that you thought might be helpful for students when providing instruction? And again, I'm pulling up my Mentimeter for that. Oh, no, actually, I'm so sorry. That was for the chat. My apologies. Is there any other suggestions, any other resources? Again, and I remember I wanted to ask you to answer this in the chat so you would immediately be able to copy and paste those resources if somebody shared something beneficial to you. Oh, I like that. Graphs in color. I'm a visual person, so I love that. Or does anybody have a specific website or a specific activity that they found helpful? I did want to show, I wanted to have a ready to go lesson for you in regards to one of the topics we talked about. So I did pick range, median, and mode today. This will be sent to you as a handout. It's a quick little anchor chart to kind of give the students an example to kind of refer to when they're doing independent practice. And then I had a few helpful hints to help them differentiate the difference between mean, median, mode, and range. I also provided a few practice questions with direct instruction. Here for the direct instruction, I had us do all four: range, median, mean, and mode for the practice, just so you could show them each. I also did an even amount, or I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers in this data set and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers in this data set, because that does matter when we're finding the median. Also, again, wanted to include decimals because that sometimes trips students up. But then I gave you questions across the three subject areas, math, science, and social studies. Okay, so again, this will be sent to you in a handout as part of today's webinar. So if you want to use it, if you want to give it to your students or you have a colleague, please, that's what it's for. Please use it. So another thing that we saw on the performance level descriptors is charts, graphs, and tables. Okay, so we know that there are going to be charts, graphs, and tables on several of the different for math, science, and social studies as well. I love, thank you, Christopher and Karen, again for, yes, to recall median is the middle. I use the example as well that the median of the road, it's the median of the road is the middle of the road. That I love that one. Is opposed to mean as well. I know it might be kind of silly or juvenile, but math was never my favorite subject. And I feel like mean requires you to do the most work. So it's the mean part of, this data set. If I have to find mean, I have to do more math. Absolutely. So, and I also like the word mode in most. Mode and most sound alike. So that one was easy as well. But thank you for that feedback. I agree that it's helpful when they kind of relate it to real life things for our students, right? So again, this is charts, graphs, and tables in the area of math. So they're going to, this is just a few examples. This is not an exhaustive list to say the least, but students must be able to use charts, graphs, and tables in math. And as we were talking about before, of all of the different question types, hotspots is something that we really see with charts, graphs, and tables in math. Okay. You're going to see here that I used different, the resource, it's called Get Some Math. And please don't let that be kind of throw you off that it's just math. I'm going to show you some, I think that that's probably how it originated with just math. But it's not just for the area of math instruction. So I won't show you every single link and just to save time today, but I wanted to show you this resource. So Get Some Math is something that my colleague, Mike Rich, he's one of the instructors on my team here at Indian River State College, showed me. He's like, Megan, we needed repetition. So we have our different textbooks, but my students need repetition, or they need something that they can take home with them and do outside of the classroom. Yeah, awesome. Janice also said that she's been using this as a resource, and so does Trixie. So I love that other people are finding this beneficial. I'm so glad that Mike shared it with me. But what I really love about it is at the bottom, there is always a short video that explains to the student how to solve each question and rationale and reasons why an answer choice is correct and why it's incorrect. Then similar questions are up above for them to do independently. And then it has the answers down here at the bottom for them. So, okay, is giving another really good example. Make sure you're watching the chat, like I said, because you guys are just a wealth of knowledge that we can all use, because we all have different experiences, serve different students for sure. So again, like I said, I won't go into each individual link here, but these links are going to be provided to you when it's posted on the IPDAY website. But plotting points, tables, kind of take the time to, if you can, to go through each of these if this is something your students are struggling on. Because like I said, it has the mini video to go through it. So it's good. You can kind of teach it in the classroom and then tell your students, hey, when you go home, because a lot of students are asking for that extra practice, or what can I work on at home? This kind of gives them that little bit of instructional support when you can, of course, be there with them. So it's kind of could be an extension of what you're doing in the classroom. Or if you're working in small groups on something else, your students could be utilizing this as a mini lesson with a little bit of instructional support with the practice questions to go with it. And I didn't show it for range, median, and in mode, but this is also where I got that idea, is because Get Some Math has range, median, and mode across the 3 subject areas as well. Okay, but back to charts, graphs, and tables. Here is also a resource, tons of resources from Get Some Math in the content of science. So again, I will go ahead and just pull up one for the sake of conversation here. I wanted to look at the difference between graphs and charts between science and math and social studies here. So as you can see here, there's a little bit more, there's more words. There's that the students, like we said earlier, they're not only having to look at charted or tabled data, but they're also having to read sentences or multiple sentences. Also, we know with science and social studies, working with that content-rich vocabulary that's specific to certain things within science is also helpful to go over. You see percentages here, but it just gives them a good opportunity to look at different tables and graphs. And again, a wealth of resources for graphs and tables on Get Some Math with science as well. And then last but certainly not least, we have it with social studies and the different ways that they're going to be not only with the charts, graphs, and tables, but also maps. They're being asked to answer questions looking at these, but they're also being asked to analyze. So we have data analyzation as well. So with these, there's not quite as many resources on Get Some Math, but there definitely are some. So when I provided these links, I told you what pages to specifically go to in order to locate these practice questions. Okay, so maps, what are some resources? And again, if you can drop them in the chat, what are some resources or some tips that you like to remind students of or use in the classroom? Oh, yes, ma'am, absolutely. Janice, were you wanting me to go to the social studies one? There you are. And again, this is not an exhaustive list of ways that charts, graphs, tables, and maps are going to be used, but this is just a kind of a resource to help get you started because we know it's such a high tested topic. They really need a lot of support in this. And I found that some resources are really good when I want to look at reading content, you know, the reading rich topics of reading science and social studies. And then some resources are better with the more math topics that are tied to science and social studies. But again, in the chat, is there any resource, any suggestion, any comment you want to make about charts, graphs, tables, and maps in the 3 subject areas? I have found that, you know, really explicitly looking at, you know, the different charts, graphs, tables, and maps, helping them analyze what it is they're seeing, kind of breaking that down at first, what information is being presented to me, what is kind of the meat of this graphic, then taking that information and being able to analyze and draw conclusions and make inferences, because especially in science and social studies they're having to recognize trends and patterns and things like that. But again, in the chat, any last remarks on charts, graphs, tables, and maps? Yes, for sure. Read everything. Read the title, read the x axis, the y axis. If it's a map, you know, where's the compass? Um, where is the key to the map? So Karen is suggesting Ducksters. That is new to me, so I'm excited to take a look at that. Score boost for GED. Okay, for sure. Thank you. So Karen's saying also GED booklets. There's a GED score boost book on data and graphic skills. Fantastic. Okay. So just a quick recap of our webinar today, shared skills and stronger scores. You're going to be able to access the GED performance level descriptors. We're going to provide that handout, but also you'll have the web address to find it on the GED.com website. Okay. Another thing is that mean, median, mode, and range across the different subject areas. Definitely take time to kind of look over those slides, remembering that we want to teach students not just how to solve those types of questions, but how to use the reference sheet from the GED.com website, how to use the graphing calculator, and all those test taking strategies, right? We're kind of embedding that in our instruction as we go, kind of elimination, things like that. Then we also talked about charts, graphs, tables across the different subject areas. Again, I gave several different links to get some math. But again, I wanted to do that just to provide the opportunity for repetition for our students, but again, provide a resource that can be used inside and outside of the classroom today. Also, shared resources for instruction. Some of you have provided some great suggestions on some different resources or different ways of presenting information to the student. So make sure that if there was anything pertinent in the chat that you wanted, that you copy that information down. Okay, and then also I'm sharing my lesson plan as well. Again, it's not a be all end all, but I wanted you to have things to take away from the webinar today, whether I provided it or one of our peers provided it in the chat, to go back to the classroom immediately to support you in your instructional role. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today. I know a link is about to be shared. If you will please provide us some feedback on your time today. Also, the next webinar will be on October 21st. It is a Tech Tuesday. And the topic of our Tech Tuesday is going to be uploading students and automatically creating test and registrations for TABE. So please keep an eye in your email for that. Again, it's going to be on October 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern. We also really appreciate you joining us today and giving us that feedback. That poll's still up for a little bit more time. Thank you all so much as well. I really appreciate the game and the other resources and suggestions that you provided.